Hey everyone, welcome to the 5 Beer Plan. I'm Brian, and this is the ongoing saga of an everyman's ale trail. In this episode, I kick off the next homebrew project, get some reading recommendations from my expert at Buckeye Brewcraft, talk beer and brats with Brian and Kai, and review a tasty triple IPA. But before we get this party started, here is this episode's burning question. What is your favorite triple IPA / hazy? I checked Untappd, and my favorite is Dominus Mortis Ghost 1276 from none other than Adroit Theory Brewing out of Purcellville, Virginia. It poured a hazy, deep orange juice color. Big aromatic juicy citrus aroma on the nose. Smooth and creamy with a pleasant hop bitterness. I noted that it was the kind of beer I could drink all day, every day, and that at 10% ABV, it was dangerously crushable. In this episode of Homebrew Hijinks, where I share my experience homebrewing, it's time to start up the Small Time Chocolate Porter. As this would be a redo of a previous beer, I knew it would be an opportune time to really dial in the steps and make sure I was hitting my numbers this time around. I wanted this beer to be perfect for the fair. This recipe was a majority of Maris Otter Pale. Another 10% each would be caramel malt and aromatic malt, with the final 7% black prince malt. The last bit would give it the roasty profile I was aiming for. I placed 3.5 quarts of water into my kettle and began to heat it up. My strike temperature would be 169 degrees Fahrenheit. As this was happening, I poured my grain bag into my brew bag and mixed in 1 ounce of rice hulls to ensure that there would be no clumping in my mash. I also measured out my hops in preparation for the boil. I heated up my oven to warm and prepared the other pots with sparge water, which I would warm once the mash was underway. I used my instant read thermometer to monitor my strike water, and when it got to temperature, I placed my brew bag into the pot and stirred it well to ensure all the grain was wet. I then took another temperature reading, which ended up being 148 degrees, which was a bit lower than my expected 155 degrees. But since I would be keeping this warm in the oven, I wasn't too concerned about that. I covered the pot and placed it in the oven. The mash would take 60 minutes. With about 30 minutes to go, I began heating my sparge water. My target was 170 degrees Fahrenheit for my fly sparge. I kept monitoring the grain, ensuring that it hovered around my target temperature. At the end of the mash, I began rinsing the grain 2 cups at a time with the sparge water, squeezing the bag along the way in order to extract all the sticky liquid until I reached my goal of 2.75 gallons of wort. Next time, we boil up the beer. Homebrewing can be overwhelming, especially if you are just starting out. Every month, I set aside a few minutes to talk to my go-to expert, David Young, owner of Buckeye Brewcraft in Columbus, Ohio, and ask him some common questions that homebrewers have. We talked previously, David, about the fact that you like to read and that you use books and such things as great sources of encouragement, sources of challenge, and just great information. I actually joined the American Homebrewers Association at one point. I believe it might even have been at your behest. They have a great magazine called Zimmergy, which I just got the most recent issue today.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That has a lot of great information for the homebrewer. But also the other cool thing is that when you renew your membership to the AHA, periodically they will give you an offer where you can get 1 free book from their bookstore.
Yep.
Basically, you pay shipping and that's it. So a couple books that I've gotten through the course of my first year of renewing is Brewing Better Beer by Gordon Strong, which I'm just trying to get into, not very far yet. And then you mentioned the Brew Like a Monk for 25. I was thinking I might want to make a mead, so I got the Complete Mead Maker by Ken Schramm. So I'm kind of excited about reading through this maybe over the winter. What are some books and things that you think are worth reading for the homebrewer, whether it's a beginner or whether it's somebody that's a little bit more advanced?
Okay. So great. I was making notes while you were talking. So I will tell you this, and this is at the potential groveling at the feet of Gordon Strong. I think for me and for my money and for my technical ability and reading and knowledge, whatever, I think Brewing Better Beer is the best brewing book out there.
Okay.
100% without a doubt. I think if I didn't tell you to get that book, I'm really impressed that you got that book. It has done well at holding up over time because that book's probably 20 years old now. It's got some age on it. I may be wrong on that, but it's not new. It's been revised and redone.
2011, the
Okay.
copyright was. So yeah.
So it's 14 years.
Yep.
Yeah. So that book is in a really cool time capsule of homebrewing. And of course, it's been updated over time in revisions, but it has this really cool time capsule of homebrewing where the stuff that's in there isn't outdated and it's still extremely relevant and able to be applied today in different ways. In particular, if I can make a recommendation to you, Brian, whether it's offline, online, whatever, the first like quarter or maybe third of the book, pay attention to the dedication to mashing. His information and explanation on what happens on mashing, I think, is done better than anybody else ever. I think Gordon absolutely nailed it.
Okay.
The whole book is phenomenal, and I use it as my technical guide most of the time. But in particular, his description on mashing changed the way that I brew beer. I also, on a nerdy side point, I judged a competition a couple months ago where he was my table partner, my judging partner. And so I actually groveled at his feet about brewing better beer. And it was great. He's a very entertaining guy. It was a lot of fun. Gordon Strong is the guy that wrote most of the style guidelines for the BJCP also. So we got to kind of pick his brain. It was really cool to judge beer with a guy that literally created the rules on what they are.
That's incredible.
Great experience. And also great personal boost that he and I were almost the same exact score on every single beer. Other books that are out there, though, I love Brew Like a Monk, and it's not because I love Belgian beer, but I got a lot more out of it than that. I think I was describing kind of in an earlier conversation that the Belgian brewers, the monostatic brewers, are much more loosey-goosey than you'd think. Now, that's not to say that there isn't precision, but I mean, they use what's available. They don't necessarily go for something very specific every single time. And it's hilariously different thought than I would have had. So I do really love Brew Like a Monk just to kind of as a maybe a more experienced home brewer as a like checkpoint of saying, okay, hey, this is cool. This is how these folks that have absolutely just created some of the most incredible beer out there have done with some great history. Zimmergy's great. Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine's really great. Radical Homebrewing by Randy Mosher. That's another one that I think will come up at the top of most people's lists. Great balance of written with narrative and technical information. Very, very good book. Also, Randy does a great job of being part of the homebrewing community as well. So love supporting that. Any of Ken Schramm's books are phenomenal. So you have The Complete Mead Maker. That is without a doubt the like go-to technical manual for anything mead making. But anything Ken Schramm has done is beautiful. There was a book, and I am going to forget the name of it. I think it's called Simple Homebrewing. It was two gentlemen. Oh, gosh. One of them is a Brewlosophy contributor, if I remember correctly. Really, really great book for the novice to get started and understand at its lowest common denominator how to make something successfully. And they reference a lot of Ken Schramm information in there, too, which is what brought me to that. There are some, I don't want to say more advanced books because I don't truly think that's what they are. But one of the other godfathers of homebrewing is a gentleman named John Palmer. And John Palmer has written what are actually technical manuals on different aspects of homebrewing, and then one very general textbook-like approach called How to Brew. That is what a lot of people refer to as the Bible of homebrewing. And I think that everybody should own a copy of it. I will say that it is not the most entertaining read because it is extremely technical. Along with How to Brew, he broke each component of homebrewing down into its own manual or writing as well. So John Palmer wrote a whole book on water. It's just unbelievable the knowledge this guy has.
Did he do water, yeast, and malt? Is he the one that did that series?
No. So that's another series that is really good. It's different from those, although I think he was a contributor on some of those, but it is a different book. I guess I'm going to keep the list simple and we'll go with one more. The other book that I like a lot and is well liked in the store as well, forgive me, I don't remember the author, but it is a book of clone recipes called Clone Brews. There have been a couple revisions of it as well, or a couple versions of it as well. It's great. Fortunately or unfortunately, It's going to give you a lot of beers that you may not be familiar with that are commercial examples. But much like we were talking in the recipe development conversation some time back, it is a great tool of knowing what a Pilsner looks like versus a Helles versus whatever other lager, opportunistic types we want to put in there. Clone Brews is a great book for that. It is literally just a book of recipes. You're not necessarily, I should say, going to learn a ton from it, but it's a great reference guide for sure.
If you have a question that you'd like answered, reach out to me at 5beerplan@frontier.com and put Ask the Expert in the subject line. Also, if you are ever in need of homebrew supplies with great customer service, expert answers, and high-quality supplies, please check out Buckeye Brewcraft. You can find them on the web at buckeyebrewcraft.com, and tell them that you heard about them on the podcast. Now, it's time for Barstool Banter. In this episode, I close down the grill with Brian, co-owner and head chef from Good Life Eats and Treats, and the bar with Kai, beer tender extraordinaire from Swamphead Brewing, both based in Gainesville, Florida. We talk about creatively thinking outside the box in both the food and brewing industry and what kind of beers they both enjoy.
You do this crazy bar-length charcuterie board or some variation thereof where people can really come out and do, I'm wanting to do things like Induja, like spreadable pork. And like I said, the elk and duck and, maybe some goose, things like that. Some unusual cured meats that would really warrant a kind of ticketed event. I mean, obviously, because the cost of those things is significantly higher, than going to Publix or Kroger. But like just a much significantly better product that would be fun to pair. Like would be fun to go in and say, okay, here's the weirdo stuff we're bringing. What beers do you want to pair with this? We're making hummus out of chestnuts. We're going to make some hummus over here out of Louisiana imported camellia beans and some chestnut. We're going to do this whole Cajun hummus. And then, got the cheesemonger saying, okay, I'm bringing in this cheese that's got green threads all running through it. And it's, sage. And I mean, we could do some really neat stuff by sort of joining forces to make a super group.
Yeah. And I think because you're in a college town as well, I think that the whole idea of doing the pairings with the breweries and the food trucks, I think that just in general, your college towns tend to be a little bit more adventurous and probably more open to that kind of thing anyway.
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
So Kai, kind of playing off of what Brian's talking about, obviously when a food truck comes in, when Brian comes in, when he comes into this food truck and people bring their sausages into the brewery, if somebody says, well, I'm looking for a beer, what do you think I should have? Then you're like, are you having the rabbit? Are you having the duck? I mean, what are you having? Do you do that kind of thing to try to help the customer that way?
Definitely, if that's something they're interested in. And I've been fortunate enough to try Brian's food a bunch of times now, and it's delicious every time. And I do try to get something different most times that I go there. And really, any beer would be good with it. But yeah, if they came in and asked me that, I would definitely ask what they got. And I usually, for the most part, unless we're really busy, I check Brian's menu kind of as soon as I get into a shift and kind of see what he's got going on. One, because it's such a hard decision to make for me, what I want to get. But two, so I can think about that for people. But yeah, actually, I don't know that I've ever had somebody come in and ask me what would go good with this sausage. But I think that's going to be the beauty of that event, is going to be that they've already predetermined what one goes with each course of his meal.
Well, front of the house clearly has its challenges. I've been in plenty of breweries over the years. What I have found is that a good beer tender makes all the difference in the world. If I go and sit down, I order my beer, and the beer tender kind of walks away and is chatting with their friend off at the end of the bar, I'm like, man, I came to chat with you and learn more about what makes X brewery tick,
Right.
How do you approach your role when it comes to being a beer tender and even the creative process you have at the front of the house and making sure your customers have a great experience?
First and foremost, I mean, I think I love when we get people that say they've never been there before, because that's really fun. Because, I think you've experienced being there yourself. Our menu is kind of overwhelming since we do have 25 beers on draft. So there's a lot of different directions you can go in. Some people don't even really like beer. I think those are kind of my favorite people, especially like we talked about earlier. What makes Swamphead unique is, I think one of them is our beers, and I think at all points during the year, we have something on draft for everybody. And it's fun finding for those people that don't think they like beer, if they try a good beer or a beer that they like is more fit to their palate, they actually do like beer. They just didn't know that they like beer. I think one of my favorites has been people that say they don't like IPAs. We do some milkshake IPAs throughout the year, and one of my favorite ones is Disco Dolphin. And
I knew you were
there
going to say
was
that.
there was a couple people this year that were, I don't like IPAs, and I was like, try this one. I think it's got coconut, pineapple, lactose. I don't know exactly what hops they're used, but it was one of my favorite beers that Swamphead does, and definitely doesn't taste like what people envision an IPA is going to taste like. They think it's going to have that hoppy, that like kind of funky taste, but not every IPA is that way. So that's one of the fun things as a beer tender, to get to introduce people to different types of beer that is still beer, just not what they think of in their mind as beer.
Yeah. Does the food truck of the day play into any of the beer offerings that you have there at the brewery?
No, our menus just kind of fluctuates throughout the year. I think even when we have done our pairings with various places, they go off of what we have on draft at that time. And so if it's something that's like either almost off of draft or we only have like so much of it left, we'll set aside a keg for that special event, and then that beer will come back at that time. But as far as like week to week, day to day, doing any pairings like that, as far as I know, we haven't done any of that.
Yeah, just kind of
Yeah.
curious. So, Brian, kind of similar
Yeah.
question for you. Do any of the beer offerings influence your menu at all during the week?
Well, I'm going to say no, except that what does influence me, though, occasionally I get so busy that I just can't. That I don't know. I get a bit overwhelmed, and I'm like, I'm just making whatever I'm making. But when I have the time, like I will look at where have I been, where am I going this week, when was the last time I was there, and what did I serve last time, what have I not served, and for me, I try to do a weekly menu. When I first started, I was changing my menu almost daily, which was insane. I don't know why I thought that was possible. It was an insane thing to do. But now I do try to think about, all right, I was at Swamphead last week and I'm there again this week. Normally I'm at every brewery like 2 or 3 times a month, but those are generally spaced out. But every once in a while you'll have a thing where you're just 8 days apart or something like that. And I go, well, I don't want to show up with 4 of the same things on the menu. So, I want to change things up because for me specifically, where I like my menu changes so often, people come to expect some variation. It would be weird to show up to the same brewery with the same menu because you do have a lot of the same customers that go. I will see regulars at various places, but some of my regulars never come to certain places. Do you know what I mean? Like I know
Yeah.
certain people who I'm like, I see them at First Magnitude and Cypress and Grove, and those are the only 2 places I see them. I have some people that I see somehow, believe it or not, at Blackadder and Daft Cow. I have people that go to those 2 breweries and only those 2 breweries. I see people at Swamphead and First Magnitude, but not anywhere else. So I don't necessarily think about what beer is on draft, but I do think about where I've been, trying to make sure that my menu at least has 1, 2, 3 things that are completely different than the last time I was there. Even if it's been a month, you look back at that menu from a month ago, go, I don't want to have accidentally stumbled into like the same menu a month later, even if I've had 3 different menus in between visits. To answer your question, no, I don't really look at the beer on draft because in some ways it's too hard to know exactly what's on draft at any moment other than the staples. If anybody asks, and some people have, I'm happy to like make recommendations about what I think. I mean, at least in broad strokes, what I think would go well with the food. I don't generally give a name, but I'll say things like, hey, go see if they have a nut brown. A nut brown or a brown ale would go really well with this, or this dish that will be like complemented by a Pilsner or, a lighter lager.
I think that's a really good point too. I think that if you're going to be in that industry, you really need to have some at least basic familiarity with styles. I think that for you, Kai, you really need to know a little bit more about the sub styles as well. But for you, Brian, having an idea of like stylistically what might pair well with what you're feeding them, I think that's a really great thing too. Same kind of thing. I've been to breweries before, and they're like, I don't know, what do you like? And I'm like, but I'm looking for your recommendation. I'm
Input.
looking for what you like. Well, I haven't had. Okay.
Sometimes that's hard, though. I mean, I will say, coming from the beer tender's perspective, There's been days, I mean, it's not often for me, but if I've gone out of town for a week and I come back, especially at Swamphead, who tries to put out 2 beers a week, you can come back to a completely different menu, and it could be the first customer we get was you, and I have not tasted 7 beers off tap. So it rarely, but it does sometimes happen to us.
That's fair. That's fair.
And I would like to, I mean, just like throw a plug at Swamphead to say that, of all the breweries in town, and not just in town, I mean, at least for me, I mean, I go far and wide. I mean, I'm heading off to Jacksonville Beach tomorrow to serve at a brewery there. I mean, I stay in Florida, but I mean, I go a little
I was going to say, I've got room up here in my front yard.
I don't think I can keep food hot that long of a drive. The thing that I really like, I think maybe most about Swamphead, and I tell people this all the time, is that this is a brewery that takes big swings. The menu's huge, and they take big swings. And, sometimes, and I think the brewers, if they're honest, and management, if they're honest, would say, like, sometimes they swing and miss. But, like, that's what's going to happen when you take big swings.
Absolutely.
And there are other breweries that I think are more consistent, and they, I mean, like, they are consistently, everything's always good, but they don't take big swings. So they never hit the home run. They just hit doubles all the time. And that's great. Swamphead hits home runs because they take big swings. And I really appreciate that. That's kind of, I don't know. I feel like that's who I am. I got to do the same thing with my food. I try big, bold combinations. And Swamphead does that. I really appreciate that. And yeah, sure. Sometimes you get a beer and you're like, that one's not my favorite. I'm going to go to the ones that are. But I've never had a terrible beer or anything there. Probably 2 or 3 of my favorite beers of all time I've gotten at Swamphead. So I appreciate that they try to put out 2 beers a week, and the menu's always like insane. I mean, it's always just like, it's always too much. I'm like, I don't even know how to choose. There's so many.
No, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's really cool that Swamp, and this was even before I was employed there. I always liked the creativity and the beers that they had. I started with their sweeter ones, which is what I think they usually get a lot of people with. I think we appease to those people that typically don't like beer, and if it's sweet enough, you can kind of like it can mask a little bit of that, like what people call beer, like the hoppiness or stuff like that. And I think it's awesome. Big shout out to Swamphead that they let us pitch them beer ideas, even though me, a beer tender that has no clue what I'm doing back in the brew house.
Right.
I can just come up with hey, this kind of style with this kind of flavor. And if it's something that they think could sell or they like the idea of, they'll listen to us and they'll even give us a little picture on the can too, which I think is really cool and unique.
Cool.
That I don't know that anybody else does.
That's cool. So we're getting kind of close to our end here, but this is all about beer. So I really want to know for both of you,
what is your really though?
Well, it hasn't been.
No, I'm kidding. Today, no, for sure.
But for each of you, what is your favorite style of beer?
For mine, it would be Imperial IPA or a NEPA, any IPA. Definitely my 2 favorite. As we've mentioned a couple times, the 10-10-10 is one of my favorite ones that I've had a couple times now, and I like the hoppiness. It's kind of like almost got like a caramelly like taste to it. It's just really good. It goes down really way too smoothly for 10% alcohol. Right? It'll get you in trouble real quick, but it's delicious.
How about you, Brian?
So I've taken a long beer journey myself, but somewhere a few years ago, I landed on IPAs, which for years I said I hate. And then it actually took a bartender up in Maryland to say, listen here, drink this whole pint. If you still hate it at the end, I'll buy you whatever you want. And halfway through, I said, you're going to owe me a beer. And at the end, I went, okay, you're right. This was great. So, and I've been pretty much on IPAs ever since. So I say IPAs generally, but a hazy juicy, man, I just love a hazy juicy. I mean, I think my current overall normal everyday beer is this Swamphead beer right here, this Understory. I drink, it's my go-to anymore. But yeah, a nice hazy juicy is probably my favorite.
Well, hey, one last fun question for you both. So, Brian, we'll start with you. If you were a beer, what style would you be and why?
So ironically, I guess I would end up being Kai's favorite kind of beer. I'd be probably like a New England IPA, I think, because they are just like me, fun and unexpected. They're bright. They can be very bright and sort of, citrusy, but also, they do the job that they're supposed to do,
Yeah.
make you feel good about yourself and feel good about the world. I think that's probably why. I mean, I think, I hope I'm right. I might be, but just deluding myself. But I think of myself as a fun and, unexpected kind of guy.
Yep,
I
I
think
like
so.
that. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Kai, how about you?
So not to be boring, but I would be a any IPA too. I also kind of thought whenever you said this, like, what beer would I be? I thought of like also what beer would I brew, and I think that that would be a NEPA. But I think I would do. I don't know if anybody does this. I've never tried one, but a NEPA with like some heat to it, like a spicy
Ooh.
NEPA. Because in my opinion, NEPAs are typically pretty sweet, and I think that would bring like a balance to the NEPA. So that's I guess how I view myself as kind of balanced. So not too spicy, not too sweet, kind of like right there in that sweet spot. But like Brian said, also gets the job done. So,
Awesome. I love that.
Hey, daddle peppers, my friend. A
oh, it would be
NEPA with some
delicious. I've
daddles.
had a Daddle Pepper beer from St. Augustine, and it was chef's kiss. It was so good. It wasn't a NEPA, but it was a lager, and it was really, really good.
Brian, I don't know. Are you familiar with the daddle pepper?
I am.
Okay. Okay.
I think at one point it might have been Jacksonville, but it could have been Tampa area. I had a beer that had daddle peppers in, and it was pretty amazing. It really was.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, it's really hard, I think, to pull off a good beer with pepper in it. It's hard to get that balance right.
Right.
The reason I suggest the daddle is because, like a hot hatch, it actually has flavor, not just heat. So you can de-seed it or mostly de-seed it, and you still get that pepper flavor that
Right.
feels like heat but isn't. And I think you can kind of pull that off with something like it. Well, you could pull it off with a hot hatch as well.
Right.
Jalapenos are much trickier because once you de-seed them, there's a little flavor, but there's not a lot of there. But
Right.
I think a daddle has like such a good flavor. I'm really big on the daddle right now. There's a big push to make the daddle the official pepper of Florida right now. So it's a local tradition or whatever.
Right. Right. Well,
Yeah.
gents, I really appreciate you joining me on the show. It's been fun to talk and get a little bit more insight into what makes the both of you tick. So best of luck with the Father's Day event, Brian, and Kai.
Thank you.
Keep serving up those beers and making people happy.
I'll do my best. Thanks for having us.
I mean, I'll serve the sausage, but yeah. And, keep people happy, I guess. But come on, man. I can only do so much.
You're a wizard, Brian. You're a wizard.
Thanks.
Seriously, what you do is great and creative. So keep up the good work.
I appreciate it. I think I'm just very lucky. I'm a very good lucky guesser.
Sometimes that's what it's all about.
Last call.
It's nearly time to wrap things up, but first, one more for the road. This episode, I'm drinking Fotality from Clag Brewing in Sandusky, Ohio. From the brewer, legend tells of a man whose faux bowl was so fucking big that it blocked out the sun. It was for sure Ka. Without further delay, so I poured this beer out into a pint glass that came from the Michigan Brewers Guild and their 25th anniversary. So this is a 10% ABV triple IPA. For those that may not be aware, Clag is one of those regional breweries that manage to put out some big bad flavorful beers. If you ever find yourself on the turnpike between Toledo and Cleveland, be sure to stop by. There's something for everyone, and they always have a great to-go cooler. So this beer pours a nice golden color. A fine white frothy head is on top. And when I popped the top on this, immediately I had notes of tangerine, nectarine, just big massive citrus that oozed out. And I can verify that on the nose. It really has a nice, actually almost a navel orange kind of vibe going on. So, first up impression. It's so good. So immediately I get that fresh squeezed, juicy orange on the palate. It is very orange forward. It has probably a medium-bodied mouthfeel. The other thing that I like about this is I can tell that it's a nice triple because it gives you that boozy burn right down the esophagus as it's heading into my belly. So the more I drink this beer, it really has a very complex citrus flavor. I was thinking it was really strong on the orangey sort of vibe, but now I'm getting a little bit more of that tangerine, maybe some of that nectarine in there. I'd be really interested to know what kind of hops that they used in this beer. They're pretty darn delicious. Honestly, with this beer, what you see is what you get, and what that is something pretty amazing, pretty special. I love the can art, and as I mentioned before, I think Clag puts out some of the best beers in the region. And I will say, for show, this is a great beer. I give this one a very strong 4.5 tasters out of 5 on the flight board. Cheers, Clag. I'm always looking for new craft beverages to review. So if you've got one from your favorite local craft brewery, meadery, or cidery you'd like me to drink and describe, reach out and let me know. That's all for this episode of the 5 Beer Plan. With so many podcasts out there, thanks for choosing to listen to mine. Join me next time as I dive back into yeast, continue the homebrew adventure, hop off the train and visit an up-and-coming Metro Detroit brewery, and review another beer. Remember to hit the subscribe button on your preferred podcast platform to be notified of new episodes. Follow me on Instagram as well, 5 Beer Plan 2022, to see what is happening on my personal ale trail. I'd love to hear from you, and there are several ways you may do so. Leave a comment for this episode on Spotify, direct message me on Instagram, or email me directly, 5beerplan@frontier.com. Be sure to support your local breweries, choose your beers wisely, and drink them responsibly. Until next time, keep walking your ale trail, and stay thirsty, my friends.